Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox-Bolton of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals, to state senators, to mayors, to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about. Today, I talk with Brownsville Mayor Trey Mendez. He makes a compelling case that his community is the future. From space travel to multinational cooperation to great food bringing us together. Mayor Mendez, working with the New Deal, has become a national leader in showing us how to make broadband more accessible and equitable. Local leaders and the White House are looking to emulate his efforts. This was an incredibly inspiring conversation. Enjoy. Mayor Trey Mendez, welcome to An Honorable Profession. It is wonderful to be speaking with you today.
Thank you, Ryan. It's an honor for me and just exciting for me to be part of this podcast. And I just want to say hello to all my fellow New Dealers out there and anybody else that may be listening.
Thank you. And we all had a little taste of a conversation with you as I moderated a panel that you were on about extending broadband access, which I really want to dive into in this conversation. First, let's talk a little bit about you. Can you talk a little bit about your path into public service? What drew you to run for office? And have you been the kind of kid who always wanted to be mayor, or is this a newfound passion?
Definitely not the kid that always wanted to be mayor, I can tell you that. Before I had the honor of serving as mayor, which has been about 2.5 years now, almost 3, I served 9 years on the Board of Trustees at Texas Southmost College here in Brownsville. It's where I was born and raised and where I felt would be the best place for me to give back. I first was elected to Texas Southmost College at the age of 30 and decided that I wanted to run for mayor at some point there towards the end of my time at Texas Southmost College, and was elected mayor in 2019 at the ripe old age of 39 years old. And at the time, I just felt that our city needed a new direction, needed some leadership that had some more vision, maybe some more thoughts on how we could grow and a different perspective, really, a younger perspective and maybe a perspective of somebody who'd been to other places and really understood what Brownsville had to offer. So definitely never thought I'd be mayor, but here I am 3 years later.
What an eventful time to choose to be mayor as we head into a global pandemic and the subsequent challenges that lie therein. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be mayor of your hometown? I was mayor of my hometown. Being mayor is an intensely intimate job, even when you didn't grow up in your community, but when you did, and you're now mayor for your elementary school teachers and your former classmates, it's a whole different experience. Can you talk a little bit about what that's like and how that perspective helps inform you in your governance?
Sure, and I think there's just something special about where you're born and raised and being mayor of your hometown. It's just special. Border cities like Brownsville are very unique. It's a different culture. It's a different mindset. Great communities, very welcoming community. And it's I don't think a week goes by that I don't hear from a former teacher, a former classmate, somebody I grew up with. And it's good because it feels like home and because it is home, right? So lots of people were behind me when I ran, and I'm just making sure that I'm able to give back and to do it in my hometown it's just so great. And it's something I don't forget. And believe me, every day that I'm here as mayor, I really focus on our city, growing our city, and making sure that I leave it in a better place than I found it.
Yeah, it's also something. Yeah, you will not forget it, but the people you grew up with will never let you forget it either. So it's always good to have that those voices around you to constantly remind you. I think in more than 100 episodes of this podcast, I don't know that we've ever talked to anyone who represented a border community. Can you talk a little bit about what that's like, and also what you think the misconceptions are around the country about your reality versus what you experience on a day-to-day basis?
Border communities are something that it seems like the only people that can really understand a border community are those that actually live in a border community, or those that were born or raised and have lived in a border community. It's extra special. You usually have two cultures. For us, we are neighbors with Mexico. They're our southern neighbor, and literally probably about less than a mile from my office is our bridge. So just on the other side, it's a totally different country, in some ways a different culture, definitely a different language. But there's a lot of things that unite border communities. You have the culture. Oftentimes you do have the language. I think in Brownsville, you can get away with speaking Spanish more than you can get away with only speaking English. But our people are our greatest asset, just extremely welcoming. And there is a lot of rhetoric out there, a lot of rhetoric in Washington from different people telling us what it's like to be on the border, or telling us what's happening on the border. But unfortunately, none of those, or the vast majority of those folks have never lived here, never even been here. Our own governor of Texas has never come down to my city to meet with me or discuss any border issues. He goes to other cities nearby. But really, it's a special place. Growing up here, it's something that unites all of us, our culture. And whether you're in Brownsville, Laredo, Eagle Pass, El Paso, or even all the way to San Diego, border communities are very similar, and in some ways different when it comes to economies and possibly politics. But down here in Brownsville, we depend a lot on Mexico, and some of us have family and friends that may be living in Mexico, or maybe some of our family members may have come from Mexico, but definitely a special place.
Is there anything, and I imagine the list is long, that in national or state policy would be able to better leverage the strengths of these border communities, which, in a globalized world can often be the sort of forerunners for newly integrated economic policy or environmental policy? What, if you could wave a magic wand, what kind of policies would you like to see at the state or federal level?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need desperately a comprehensive immigration reform, and that's been something that's decades in waiting. We haven't been able to solve it, and doesn't look like we're going to be able to solve it anytime soon. I'm very hopeful, though. I think the new administration has been focusing on ways to improve the process, but certainly comprehensive immigration reform would be at the top of the list. I think taking advantage of some of the economic advantages that we have from Mexico, even Canada, is something that's beneficial for border communities. As far as technology and innovation, there's some places in Mexico that are even more advanced than places in the U.S. or in Texas. We have a very thriving industry in Matamoros, which is right next to Brownsville. They're really innovative when it comes to the automotive industry, the electronics industry. They've got some wind and solar power technologies that are happening over there, even aerospace not too far away. So a lot of really, really great technologies that are happening on the other side of the border that I wish we could integrate into our community and into our economy, and I'm working on some ways to do that. We have a very robust and growing aerospace economy here in Brownsville, which I'm hoping to grow through some of our partners south of the border and maybe lean on them for some workforce initiatives. But overall, there is some synergy and I think some opportunities to further policy, whether it's economic or otherwise.
I mean, I think this is newsworthy, right? This is a story you just don't hear talked about, which is you're saying let's leverage technology from south of the border to help do economic development here in the United States. And all the debates about our policies with our neighbors, you don't hear that narrative, but in reading about your work, it's something you're intensely focused on.
Absolutely, and especially because of what's happening in Brownsville, we're seeing aerospace as a way to lift our community up economically. We are one of the poorest communities in the United States. We're also one of the least connected communities in the United States, and my goal as mayor is to cross our name off of both of those lists, and we're working hard to do that. But I see some opportunities to really gain an advantage in aerospace and in the aerospace industry through some of the technologies, some of the workforce innovations that are happening in Matamoros, and that's either through manufacturing or through some type of component technologies. We see some opportunities out there. There's actually some stuff that's happening, not necessarily in Matamoros, but other cities in Mexico, where they're doing some really cool stuff with aerospace, and we want to leverage some of that technology and some of that workforce and some of those strategies and use them here in Brownsville, because as quickly as we're growing, the reality is we're going to possibly not have enough people in our workforce to keep up, and we got to make sure that we can fill those needs. So looking at leveraging some of those resources from Mexico and helping our community and our economy.
And you also mentioned a key component of this is expanding broadband access. And this is something that you've really been a national leader on and work closely with the New Deal to develop policies and best practices that other communities could emulate. Can you talk a little bit about your challenge and then what you see as some of the solutions that you're developing there in Brownsville?
Sure. And when I was elected, Ryan, a couple of years ago, well, 3 years almost now, in 2019, Brownsville, Texas was named one of the top cities when it came to connectivity. And when I'm saying top, I'm not saying in a good way. We were considered one of the least connected communities in the United States, along with a couple of other urban cities, and definitely not something to be proud of. And when you're talking about connectivity, you're talking about access to internet, access to resources, and it's really an economic development tool the way we see it. So when I saw and when I first heard that we were on that list, my thoughts were, we got to get off this list, and why aren't we off this list already? So late 2019, just a couple months after we came into office, I put together a group of 7 stakeholder entities here in Brownsville, and we all contributed some money to put together a plan, brought in some people that had done it before in other places, some really great consultants that coincidentally one of them was from Brownsville, and so he really took it as a personal challenge to try and help us out. And within a few months, we had a comprehensive strategy for broadband and how to implement it here in Brownsville. And that came at the perfect time because, like I said, we started in late 2019, and we all know what happened in early 2020, March specifically here in Brownsville. We started our COVID time. Unfortunately, I believe I declared the disaster here March 17th of 2020, but thankfully we already had that process going, and it was pretty well ahead of other communities. So we've continued with that, got our plan together, and because we had these stakeholder entities, that just put us so much further ahead because there was buy-in from the community and all the necessary stakeholders. So we all moved forward. We saw the value of being connected during the pandemic, and especially in education, in hospitals, and other industries. So we've just continued to move forward and move as quickly as we can. And thankfully, because of that foresight, we're well ahead of other communities. And thankfully, our presidential administration also prioritized broadband and prioritized funding for communities like ours. So we will be funding our broadband middle mile. It's going to be about $19.5 to $20 million. We've already allocated the funding. We use some ARPA funds for that. And well on our way. We've already started the procurement process, actually going to be selecting a vendor here in the next few weeks and breaking ground pretty soon thereafter, and hopefully have our middle mile done by the end of next year. And then we're also starting the process for our last mile, getting a partner in industry to help us with the last mile so we can make sure we have fiber to all the homes here in Brownsville.
What advice do you have to people, and you see this in both urban and rural communities who are struggling with broadband access? What advice do you have for them to speed up their process and get connectivity to their communities?
Well, I think they need to really, first of all, just realize and figure out where the connectivity exists. There's a lot of maps out there, but not all of them are accurate, so I would suggest them partnering with somebody in the industry, a neutral, not somebody that is necessarily an internet service provider, because I think that they may have some of their own reasons for being a part of it. But partner with somebody that is neutral, partner with somebody that's going to get you the actual data and the maps and tell you where people are connected and tell you where you could use some help. And just because there's access to service doesn't mean that it's the type of service you need in your community. What we learned throughout our process here in Brownsville is that the internet service providers were telling us that we were almost 100% connected, or we had access to internet in almost 100% of our community. And that's a little bit of I guess you could say it's not totally true, because even though some people may have the ability to connect, the type of connection is not the speed that we need, and it also wasn't affordable or accessible to most of our community. I believe almost 70% of our community lack the access to the internet. So look at, once you have a map and once you know where the fiber may exist, and be sure that it's fiber, because not everywhere has fiber. A big part of Brownsville did not have fiber, so look at what type of connection it is, what kind of service exists. Look at download speeds for sure, but more importantly, look at upload speeds, because what we learned during the pandemic is not only do you need to be able to have some good download speeds, but when you have multiple members of your household that are connected, you're going to need that upload speed as well. And a lot of the existing providers that we had in our community had very, very slow upload speeds, so that was a hindrance for students being able to do some work and other people in the household maybe that needed to be on the internet at the same time, whether that was a Zoom conference or maybe even telehealth, whatever the reason may be. You need the upload speeds just as much as you need the download speeds. Make sure you know which people in your community aren't connected. Look for grants and look for any sort of assistance that may exist at the federal level first.
That makes sense. It strikes me, as I've listened to you and talk with you, and as well as read about some of your efforts, you really emphasize that you need to take a strategic and long-term approach to governance. And I think that is becoming increasingly hard in the world we live in, and especially in a world of COVID where there are really critical and immediate needs. How do you balance the need for long-term thinking and planning with the constant demands on a mayor and a community for immediate relief or addressing immediate issues?
I'll tell you what, Ryan, it's tough, and it's been extremely difficult. My position as mayor has turned into really a full-time job, and it's one that comes with a hefty salary of $0. So I don't get paid for this. It's totally volunteer. And once COVID started in March of 2020, I've been pretty much full-time almost for the last 2 years, and I'm also a practicing attorney, so it has hurt my practice, quite honestly, and I do have a restaurant which has been thankfully pretty successful. So lots of things to do in very little time, but I think for that reason it's important to use your time efficiently and use it wisely. So my strategy has always been to come up with a plan and execute, more importantly, because lots of people have ideas, but the real value is in executing those ideas. So I'm fortunate that in the city of Brownsville we have a good administrative team, we have a good commission. They've allowed us to really move forward quickly. Just because I have a vision doesn't mean it'll happen unless we have the right team, but thankfully we do, and my vision's really starting to come to fruition as far as making us not only a destination city, but an innovative city and a smart city, and the key to that is planning and strategy. And when we were elected, there was no strategic plan that existed in our city, no real master plan, no plan for growth or anything to combat urban sprawl, and we've done all that despite COVID, and it's been a great ride, and I think because it's happening during COVID, it just means that much more and is that much more valuable. So planning and strategy is great, but you have to have the team to execute it.
And how do you think, I saw that on your website about practicing law and insurance law, which is really requires a lot of hands-on work, and then a restaurant, which also requires hands-on work, and obviously mayors were very hands-on. How do you think about the allocation of your time and energy when you have all these demands on you on a on a 7-day a week, 24-hour a day basis?
It's 24/7, 365. I'll tell you, but I don't think that I always know what I'm gonna be doing when I wake up in the mornings. I think it's day to day. I do keep a calendar, and a very comprehensive one, but as you know, mayoral demands sometimes change, and you may wake up not even realizing what you're going to be facing that day because things just change so quickly. And I really do prioritize my role as mayor. The other two things, obviously the restaurant and my law office, come after that. I'd say the law office comes after, and then the restaurant. But I'm lucky to have a great business partner at the restaurant, and I'm a solo practitioner here at the law office. So that has been difficult. As a litigator, it's been difficult to stay on top of things at the office, but I just make the time, and because that's what I got to do.
And how do you think about those competing demands when you think about, running for re-election and continuing to serve? It feels unsustainable when I hear your description, but you're doing such amazing work for your community that could have a long-term impact.
And I think that's really what keeps me going on a daily basis, is knowing the impact and knowing who we're serving. Having grown up here, like I said, being from this community and the challenges that our community faces, not only socioeconomically, but from a connectivity standpoint as well. We have some health issues down here as well. About 70% of our community suffers from a chronic illness. So it's about knowing who you represent and prioritizing your community and knowing that you have the skill set to really lift it up and make the positive changes and make a difference in your community. That's what keeps me going on a daily basis. And the best part about being mayor is the service, seeing the results and seeing the real positive changes that can happen. And believe it or not, even just hearing from our constituents and seeing them get excited and energized about what's happening in our community and hearing a thank you from them every now and then is what keeps me going.
So do you have any advice for a listener who maybe practicing law, may not be fully fulfilled by it, or own a restaurant and want to make broader changes in the community about how to engage with public service and how to find that balance and make the most of those opportunities?
Well, I think public service is very rewarding. It gives you what you're willing to put in, and if you put in the work, you'll see the results, and it's very satisfying. For any attorney that's out there, I think they automatically have a good set of tools to help their community. Having a background in the law and really wanting to serve, I think, is good quality in most attorneys. And restaurant owners, just it's fun. It's actually fun owning a restaurant. It's been one of the things I think that really helps keep me kind of relaxed, and it's, for me, it's a bit of an escape. So whenever I'm helping manage the restaurant, it's something I see as kind of a way to take a step back and take a deep breath and recharge the batteries a little bit. I get to interact with members of the community, which is always good, and certainly my time is very scarce, but I make the most of it, and I try and be as efficient as I can with my time.
Yeah, I imagine it's got to be nice because so many things we work on in government have so much process and time involved that just getting a meal in front of someone, hot meal, having them eat it, like there's a beginning, a middle, and an end that's quick. That is just it's got to be so different than the challenges you face day to day.
Oh yeah, being able to break bread with the community is always a good thing, and I try not to really take my mayoral role into the restaurant. Sometimes it's inevitable, but just seeing people happy, seeing people enjoy themselves is very satisfying. Same thing with public service. I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Seeing the changes you make, seeing the positives, and just seeing the benefits to the community and hearing the differences that you're making is very rewarding and something that I see as the best part of the job.
So last question. I have 24 hours in Brownsville. What do you recommend?
Okay. Well, That's a good question. It depends if there's anything in particular you want to do, but we've got so many great things going. Brownsville is the largest city in the Rio Grande Valley, which is South Texas. We are the 16th largest city in the state of Texas, and we're the second most historic. We have all sorts of beautiful mid-1800 buildings in our downtown. We've really focused on revitalizing our downtown, so no trip to Brownsville is complete without coming downtown and seeing some of our history. Maybe if time allows, take a trip to our Gladys Porter Zoo, which has been here for 50 years and is a preeminent zoo in South Texas. And before you leave Brownsville, I'm going to have to get you some good food. Make sure you've got some calories in you. But we got to go by the SpaceX launch facility, which is just about 20 minutes from my office down in Boca Chica. That's changing the world. The things that are out there are just revolutionary. I think it epitomizes Brownsville. SpaceX has been a company that's been resilient, that's been innovative, and that takes things into its own hands. And when there's no solution, they find one. And I think that's really something that can be said about our city, too. And it just being out there, you feel what the future is. You can see it, and you can really just experience the future of space travel down here, and it's amazing, and it's well worth the trip.
I like it. I'm ready to head south to see the future.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's amazing. The things that are happening down here are just amazing. There's probably a couple thousand employees. Elon Musk is here the majority of the time, and they've really focused on Boca Chica and South Texas, and we're happy for it. And it's something that we've leveraged to help grow the aerospace industry in Brownsville as well.
That's fantastic. I'm ready to come. Well, we appreciate your service. We appreciate that you've been willing, as you expanded broadband and increased connectivity in your community, you've also done it in a way that you've shared with other New Deal leaders how to do it so that we can replicate, maybe even steal your best ideas in our own communities. And we're grateful for all that you do for your community, but also for the New Deal as a whole.
Well, I really value being a member. It's been a great honor for me, and just being able to share ideas with some of the other members and be a part of this group. Just such high caliber individuals has been fun for me, and I look forward to more chats and more nerdy talk. And if anybody needs any information regarding broadband or anything else, Neapolitan pizza, space, anything, just reach out. It's my email is trey.mendez@brownsvilletx.gov. Reach out anytime if I can help, and I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And that's quite an array of subject matters that we can engage with you on. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to An Honorable Profession. Please subscribe to hear more amazing leaders and keep asking your elected officials to be honorable. Boots Road Group produces podcast. I'm Ryan Coonerty, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.